Welcome to an epic explainer, where we take ancient foundational texts and break them down to answer some truly bizarre questions. Today, we're looking at an incredible story from the ancient Indian epics that honestly reads a lot less like a traditional myth and way more like a high-stakes, supernatural spy thriller. We are going to explore a massive cosmic heist, a totally desperate infiltration mission, and it all leads up to answering one very specific, very strange question about a legendary sage. And that question is this. Why did an ancient sage completely ban his followers from ever touching a drop of wine? Now, you might be wondering if it has to do with standard religious fasting or, a pursuit of mental clarity. But the answer we get from our source text is as shocking as it is dark. He banned it because he accidentally drank his own student. Yes, you heard that right. To understand exactly how a venerated teacher ends up consuming his own disciple in a glass of wine, we really have to look at the massive political and military crisis that set the stage for the whole disaster. Section 1. The Cosmic War and the Secret. Okay, let's dive into this and rewind to a time when the universe was locked in a massive, seemingly endless war for sovereignty. Notice the power dynamic here. You had the Celestials, the gods, battling against the Danavas, or the Asuras, and both sides had these immensely powerful priests guiding them. The gods installed Vrihaspati, while the Asuras were led by the brilliant Sukra. But here's the thing. This was absolutely not an evenly matched fight. The gods were losing, and I mean they were losing badly, all because the Asura's priest, Sukra, had a massive, game-changing tactical advantage over his counterpart. That advantage was something called Sanjivani. This was the ancient science of revivification. Sukra alone knew this ultimate secret weapon. I mean, just imagine fighting a war where every single time you kill an enemy soldier, their priest simply speaks an incantation and brings them right back to life to fight again. That was the grim reality for the gods. Sukra was constantly reviving fallen Asura warriors, while the gods' casualties, under the guidance of Vrihaspati, who didn't know this science, just stayed permanently dead. The sheer math of this war meant the gods were destined for absolute defeat, unless they could somehow level the playing field. Section 2. The Infiltration Mission. So desperate times call for incredibly dangerous measures, right? The gods realized they literally couldn't defeat the Asuras on the battlefield, so they decided to just steal the science of Sanjivani. They recruited Vrihaspati's eldest son, a young man named Kacha, to go deep undercover behind enemy lines. He travels to the Asura capital, walks right into the court of the enemy, and proposes an incredibly long game to Sukra. He doesn't just ask for the secret outright. No way. Instead, he vows to serve as his disciple and practice a strict mode of life for a staggering 1,000 years. And Sukra, perhaps a little flattered by the son of his rival coming to him for tutelage, actually accepts Kacha as his student. But Kacha knew he needed serious leverage. Just being a student wouldn't be nearly enough to unlock a top-tier state secret like Sanjivani. So he launches this centuries-long charm offensive. He didn't just serve Sukra. He focused intensely on Sukra's powerful and favorite daughter, Devayani. He spent hundreds of years charming her. He sang and danced for her, he gathered the specific flowers and fruit she liked, and he provided just absolutely perfect, dedicated service. He made himself completely indispensable to both the teacher and the teacher's daughter. And, this strategy worked perfectly for a while. Kacha successfully stayed completely under the radar, acting as the perfect, loyal disciple. But after 500 years of this vow had passed, the Asuras finally caught on. They figured out his true intention. They realized that the son of their enemy's priest wasn't there just to learn generic wisdom. He was a spy, sent to steal their ultimate weapon, the science of reviving the dead.
Section 3. 3 gruesome deaths.
This discovery kicks off a brutally dark and, honestly, almost darkly comedic cycle. The Asuras decide to permanently eliminate this spy, which leads to a timeline of escalating assassinations. But remember, they are trying to kill a man whose master is the sole inventor of resurrecting the dead. The first time, they find Kacha alone in the woods tending cows. They hack his body into pieces. But when he doesn't come home, Devayani complains to her father, who simply uses Sanjivani to bring him right back. So the Asuras try again. Sometime later, they kill him and literally pound his body into a paste, mixing it with the ocean. Again, Devayani weeps, Sukra chants, and Kacha is pulled right back from the ocean waters. The Asuras realize they need a foolproof plan. They need to put Kacha somewhere that even Sukra can't retrieve him from. So, for their final attempt, they burn Kacha to ashes. And their desperation here reaches an absolute diabolical masterstroke. The first time, his remains went to the jackals and wolves. The second time, into the vast ocean water. But the third time,
They took those burnt ashes of Kacha and mixed them directly into the wine of their own priest, Sukra. And Sukra, entirely unaware, drank the wine. The spy was now physically inside the master. As always, night falls and Kacha is missing. Devayani throws a massive, dramatic ultimatum. It is plain he hath been lost, or has died. I tell thee truly, I would not live without him. She forces her father's hand completely. She threatens to starve herself and follow Kacha into death if Sukra doesn't use his magic to bring the boy back. Section 4. The Impossible Dilemma. So Sukra, pushed by his daughter's profound grief, reaches out with his magical senses to summon Kacha back from the realm of the dead. But this third murder creates a literal life-or-death paradox for everyone involved. Because when Sukra summons his student, he doesn't hear a voice calling from the woods or the ocean. He hears a tiny, feeble voice replying from inside his very own stomach. The Asura's plan had worked perfectly. It presents the ultimate question. How on earth do you save someone who is physically trapped inside their own rescuer?
The logic is completely inescapable. If Sukra uses his power to revive Kacha and pull him out, Kacha will have to rip open Sukra's stomach, effectively killing the great priest. But leaving him in there means the spy remains dead. Sukra points this out to his daughter, hoping she'll finally just let the boy go. But Devayani flat out refuses to accept either outcome. She tells her father that losing Kacha and losing her father are the exact same tragedy to her, and she will not survive either one. She demands a solution where both of them live.
So here is the crucial point, this brilliant workaround that Sukra is forced to invent right on the spot. Step 1. While Kacha is still inside his stomach, Sukra imparts the ultimate secret, the science of Sanjivani, to the boy. He literally teaches him the spell from the inside out. Step 2. Sukra tells Kacha to start his life anew as his son, and allows Kacha to rip his way out of his stomach, killing Sukra in the process. Step 3. The newly revived Kacha, now armed with the knowledge of Sanjivani, immediately turns around and uses that exact science to resurrect his dead master. It is just a breathtakingly clever loophole to an absolutely impossible problem.
Section 5. The Ultimate Hangover and the Ban on Wine.
Let's look at the aftermath and the massive cultural fallout from all of this. Kacha has successfully completed his mission and now possesses the Sanjivani. But when Sukra wakes up from being dead, he isn't just relieved, he is utterly horrified. He looks at Kacha, standing before him, and realizes the true gravity of what just happened. He was deceived by the Asuras, sure, but the real culprit, in his eyes, was the loss of consciousness brought on by drinking wine. That intoxication allowed him to be tricked into committing the horrific act of consuming his own student. He realizes in that moment that a clouded mind is the greatest vulnerability of all. Rising up from the ground in a furious rage, Sukra makes a sweeping declaration, setting a hard boundary for the whole universe. He decrees, "The wretched Brahmana, who from this day shall drink wine, shall be regarded as having lost his virtue and committed the sin of slaying a Brahmana. Because of this one incident of cosmic espionage, because of this one highly targeted assassination attempt, drinking alcohol is forever equated with the sin of murder for his followers." And what about the war? Well, the aftermath is perfectly summarized here. Sukra calls the Asuras over, basically calls them foolish, and tells them that their plot has backfired spectacularly. Kacha now has the knowledge. The stunned Asuras realize their supreme advantage is entirely gone, and they literally just give up and go home. Kacha, being a man of his word, actually sticks around to finish the remaining 500 years of his 1,000-year internship. And once his time is finally up, he returns to the gods wielding the power of Sanjivani and permanently changing the tide of the cosmic war. Which brings us to a final, absolutely fascinating thought to leave you with. We started this explainer by asking why a very specific rule about wine existed. And as you've seen, the answer wasn't about health or simple morality at all. It was the direct result of a magical spy being smuggled inside a glass of wine to steal a resurrection spell. It really leaves you wondering, when we look at ancient texts and these strict rules passed down through millennia, how many of our deeply held cultural rules today are simply the collateral damage, the hangover, if you will, of a mythological spy mission gone spectacularly wrong? Keep that in mind the next time you uncover a piece of ancient history. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the origins of everything.